Andrew from the USA with me. Yay.
Yeah, you got the big Peter Bartholomew joining, which is great.
Peter.
Hey, wow. This is going to be a big one. Wow. People from all over. Fantastic. All right.
Mike, good to see you.
Hey. All right. Hello and welcome. I am not going to do the welcome to country today because I'm not in the country. I'm coming to you from a sunny little corner of the Midlands in the UK. My name is Danielle Stein Fairhurst. I'm a financial modelling specialist, and it's my pleasure to be the host for this session today. So welcome, everybody. It's been a while since we did one of these, but it's fantastic to do it again. So we've got a really special event in store for you today. Let me introduce you to the guests first of all. So first of all, we've got Lance Rubin. So he's always the first to try out any new technological advances, Mr. Technology, particularly to do with financial modelling. Hello, Lance. Thanks for joining us for so late at night for you in Melbourne.
Thanks, Danielle. Great to be here. And it's been a while since my last one, so looking forward to it. It's going to be a big one.
Yeah. And next we have Craig Hatmaker, C-Hat, so Mr.
Chatmaker, yes.
Chatmaker, yeah, coming to us from New York, right?
Well, New York time zone. I'm from a small town in Virginia.
Yeah, okay. And Craig says he's been around since before Excel, which I find so hard to believe. I cannot believe that there was a time before Excel, and he's been following the technologies ever since. So thanks so much, Craig, for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Okay, and we've got Jeff Robson joining to us from Perth in Western Australia. He is always on the cutting edge of new technology, and he's always the first to try out new Excel features. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Danielle, guys, thank you for having me.
Okay. So it is a really exciting event we've got in store. We're going to talk about the use of ChatGPT for financial modelling. So is there a future for ChatGPT in financial modelling? I know we've got Copilot coming out soon, so we're going to talk about that. And we've got some really exciting ways of using ChatGPT in the context of financial modelling. So to kick us off, I'm going to ask Lance to share his screen and we'll get underway.
Excellent. So thanks, Danielle.
Sorry, Lance, just one thing, apologies. For those of you who are joining us live on Zoom, do feel free to put any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on those, or in the chat. So if it's any specific questions, just pop them in the Q&A, and any sort of comments you can pop in the chat. Sorry, Lance, go ahead.
No, all good. So it's fair to say, Danielle, I think we're going to have a few of these, right? This is part one, and I think there is so much tech hitting us at the moment. So really the purpose of this whole series is to unpack a lot of this technology. We're starting with ChatGPT because that's the rage in AI and generative AI. So this is part one. I'm going to go a little bit into some of the detailed aspects of ChatGPT, how it works, some of the parameters. If you haven't read the article that Jeff and I wrote, definitely have a look at that. It's on LinkedIn. But really, we're going to then explore the explosion of AI, and Craig's being a technologist and having spent a lot of time in technology is going to open up and blow our minds as well with some cool stuff. And then, of course, myself and Jeff are going to do some really cool, funky Excel stuff that you could do yourself. There is some VBA script that Jeff has kindly shared for free for everyone. So if you're not sure where to go to his YouTube channel, and there's some information there. And then I'm also going to share some stuff, the slides and a workbook as well. And then I'm going to talk about what's next, because this is definitely not the end of this series. This is only the start. So ChatGPT, we've got to remember, this is a language model, particularly GPT 3.5 or 4 if you're using it, and versus a calculation model, right? It's a very important distinction, and why often we see the calculations are wrong in ChatGPT. We don't really understand them. And Jeff's going to uncover some really hidden gems, and how do we get the accuracy out of a model? And so we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about tokens, language models and parameters, prompt design, and why does it get it wrong, right? So as I said, ChatGPT is a language model. It's used and it's generative. It's taking a lot of information. It's used in a way of recognizing patterns, which is called reinforcement learning from human feedback. So all this information was collated collaborated and combined, and then interacting with humans to get feedback. And it's really good at certain things, but it has not mastered computational logic yet, because that's not the way it was built. So we have to remember the models that are being built with these AI engines have a particular purpose. ChatGPT is a language model. That's its purpose. It's not a calculation model. We try to use it for something different. It's kind of like asking a GP to suddenly become a dentist. I don't think that'll be a great experience if you're going for a tooth extraction. So you've got to really be careful. So tokens and tokenizer is how it actually works and does the calculations and how it builds these relationships. So what you can see on the left is I've used the tokenizer, which is in OpenAI, and I've typed in what on earth are tokens and how are they created. And there you can see a response. You can see how it's being highlighted. You can see all the relevant information in terms of number of tokens, characters, and you can see the shading. And it even includes the shading of the particular exclamation marks and all of the information that we need. By the way, I'm using Zoom It for those that don't know of what I did there. So it's important to actually understand underneath all of this, all of those tokens, all that data is being fed into this large language model and building these relationships and patterns, right? Very good at pattern recognition. So there's different model types. We're going to be using the Da Vinci model. All models have different parameters, different sizes. There's also another parameter called temperature. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, is this going to get a bit hot and steamy? But it's not that. It's actually the amount of creativity or randomness. So you'll often see also in a couple of the other AI tools, Bing, for instance, you can choose the more creative and more accurate. That's what that temperature factor is. It's allowing the generative AI to be more random in terms of its what it feeds back. And then the prompting structure. How do we structure a prompt? It's going to be the skill around, just like everyone's got good skills at Googling. We're going to have good skills at prompting. And so we need to understand the role, the content, the context. All of these things are important. So here's just an example. This is another add-in. I've played with quite a few add-ins with GPT. There's a GPT prompt, GPT predict, and interact. And you can see they all have a similar sort of input features. To build a good prompt, you need to have clarity, specificity, guiding the formatting, controlling the length, anticipating and misunderstanding. So it's very much a conversational back and forth. Prompting is about, you're not going to get the perfect answer straight away. It's about how do you work with that information, knowing that it's going to be imperfect. Time awareness, 2021 September is the current data set for ChatGPT. So be careful asking it about something that's more current. I think eventually they will obviously release more up-to-date data sets. GPT-4, which is, you have to pay for that to get it to more, it's a better engine, but it's still on the old data. Iterative prompting, like I said, go a bit back and forth. And I tried a bit of that, when you're trying to write VBA code, you test it, it doesn't work, you go back. Those sort of things are really useful. Experimentation. I mean, just try. It's going to blow your mind and it's going to be freaky, but at the same time, a lot of people are trying this. And I think, Danielle, you've got a poll that you were going to launch, just asking people about, how many people have actually tried it. And it'd be good to, maybe at this point, just to see what people have tried it or not, or are you expecting us, your resident experts, and I'm no expert in AI, although I love tech, to really help you. So, it's going to be one of those assumed skills. Do you go for an interview and say, do you know how to use Google? No, because everyone's assumed to know it, right? Everyone's assumed to know, in finance and accounting, do you know how to use Excel? Well, what a stupid question. Of course I do. How well do you know how to use it? That's a different question altogether. And I think that's where we're going to need to learn how to use these prompting structures and prompting design and engineering, so we get the right answer and we don't waste a lot of time. Google's an imperfect search, and GPT is obviously going to be a lot quicker and easier.
Wow,
So
that's some
Danielle,
really interesting results here. So 91%, so 87 people have said that they are not using ChatGPT for financial modeling, and only 9%, so 9 people out of 98 respondents. So 9% of people have said yes, they are using ChatGPT
Wow.
financial modeling. Gosh, that's
See, I think Craig and I were right. I think Craig and I were right. I think most people would not be using it, and for various reasons. I think security, just pure, I guess the fear factor as well in terms of, you're contributing to the knowledge of an AI, bot, and what does that mean? So, for those that don't know, it's actually been around for quite a while. So the first GPT model was released in 2018, and we're probably all still running around. Certainly 2019, 2020 is a bit of a haze with all the pandemic and lockdown stuff, but it has been released over time. And it's really in March 2023 when they released GPT 3.5 and the turbo that it really sort of accelerated. And particularly, that's now being made available to public, and people are using it, and I'm embedding it, like Jeff's going to show us, into other applications and other tools. So it has been around, but of course it's improving. So GPT-4, again, you can see the training data, all of this is up to September 21, but GPT-4, which again, you pay a small contribution, I think it's $20 US a month, and you can use it. There is a limiting in terms of how many queries you can answer, but it's far more powerful and it's far more creative than GPT 3.5, which is the free version. So if you do want to have a dabble, then you'll need to purchase either that, and of course to use the add-in and to use the API endpoint, which is the application programming interface. It's the interface between Excel and OpenAI. So that API endpoint, you will have to buy, again, a subscription, but it's pay as you go.
Super cheap.
Right?
Yeah. It's
like 1 cent. I think it's 1 cent for a query. It's like if you're lucky,
even less.
Partially, even less. So you're not talking about big money, but it's great to learn. So why does it get it wrong? And I think I read something the other day, like 50% of what you get back from ChatGPT is wrong, right? In fact, there was a case in the US where a lawyer used it in a legal case, and he got pulled over the coals by the judge because those cases didn't exist. So why does it get it wrong? Well, firstly, it's early days, right? We're talking about a toddler in technology in terms of human growth. But garbage in, garbage out, no different to our financial models. You put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out. So there are going to be data gaps. There are going to be information. That's why prompting is so important, so that we can understand and feedback and improve. Otherwise, it's going to generate whatever it thinks, or whatever gets recognized and calculated as being the correct answer. So, there's no rational reasoning or thinking or gut feel. That's a human thing. So it just believes that it's right, and very convincingly. But you can say, hey, ChatGPT, you're wrong. This is wrong, or this code is wrong. Please fix it. And you'll get this great apology, right? I'm really sorry. And it'll go back and fix it for you. So really, really impressive the way that they've built this, because they give it that human element about being a little bit empathetic. I know that sounds weird to say, but it often is this case that it's got a bit of humor and a bit of give. Such
an interesting case that you mentioned. Lance Patrick is saying that the lawyer tried to please the ignorance defense with the judge, which was a bad move.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just laziness, and frankly,
Didn't check
why
it.
people
You did not check it.
Didn't check it. Just assumed, just thought it was an advanced Google search, right? But it's generative AI. It's generative. It's going to generate an answer where it doesn't have the data.
And you need to be able to check it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's a pretty cool AI. Look at this.
Hi, I'm Craig Hatmaker's AI avatar. My voice was created on 11labs.io, and my animation was created on studio.d-id.com.
That's so cool. I love it.
Mr. Real Hatmaker, what do you think of Mr. AI Hatmaker?
It was a lot of fun to create, and it only took a few minutes to do. I'd like to circle back for just a second about the lawyer conversation, and also because Patrick O'Byrne is on here. When I'm creating a report for a white paper for USPRIG, and I wanted to do some research. So I got ChatGPT and I said, hey, can you help me research some things about Lambda? And it went out and it got me a lot of scholarly articles, and I'm looking at all the results and I'm going, this is fantastic. ChatGPT, can you please give me the citations so I can go read them myself? And it said, sure, here are the citations. So I went and I clicked on every link, and every link was a 404 error or page not found. It made stuff up. Very disappointing. But that's what it's supposed to do. It's a generative language model. It will make stuff up. That's its job, is to make stuff up. It's not a computational model, as you said. It is a language processor. So one of the things about, also you mentioned, Lance, about ChatGPT is that it has a data set that's only good from September of a year ago. Now, or actually 2 years ago. If that bothers you, one of the things that you can do is go to Google's Bard. Google's Bard will do two things that ChatGPT won't. And that is, one, it will search the internet as it is today, and it will bring back references so that you can click on them and go to those web pages. This is showing the explosion of AIs that is occurring as one thing comes out, another thing comes out that's better, and then someone else leapfrogs that. So this is exploding. It is getting better. It will get better. So even though it has problems today, a lot of the problems you see today will vanish tomorrow. And we're seeing all kinds of AIs. We're seeing AIs related to text, which is ChatGPT 4 is related to that. Google Bard, I mentioned before. Facebook has Llama. Many of you remember IBM Watson. That's been around for a while. So AI has been around for a long time. Why is it so interesting today? Because ChatGPT is free. And then everyone else came out with, you got OpenAI's DALL-E, you've got Adobe's coming out with Firefly, Midjourney for images. You have things that do voice and music. So you just saw 11 Labs do my voice for me, although it wasn't my voice, but it did a great job, I think. And then you have animation and video, and then you saw DID do animation of this image. So you see, this is the image that I gave DID that you're looking at, and then it animated it from a single image. I mean, this was just amazing to me. So there are lots and lots of things out there that are AI, and the world is your oyster right now. Let's go on to the next page, please.
So there's a lot of great.
Hi, I'm Craig.
Sorry, it's so good. I had to play it again. There's some great questions. We'll come back to those on the chat, but I think there's some really good ones. Sorry, Craig, go for it.
Okay, so the thing I hear, I see a lot of is the question, will AI replace me? And the answer right now is no. I'll say right now, I've tried having ChatGPT and these other engines do calculations, and I've been sorely disappointed with what they can come up with. So I will say unequivocally right now, no, it's not replacing anybody. But I will say that people who use AI will probably replace you if you're in a competitive situation. So we've been talking a lot about creating a financial model, which we've also discussed that ChatGPT is not really good at right now because it doesn't do computations, although Jeff's going to show us some things that may give you some hope. But there are a lot of things that, as a financial modeler, that we must do that have nothing to do with financial modeling if you get our Excel. And while you have gone to classes to learn how to do financial modeling, how many of those classes taught you how to run your business? So if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, there are several things that you need to do that are part of your business that ChatGPT, Bard, DID, and many of these other things can help you with. So let's move on. All right, so one of the things that is kind of, I hope people understand, is that when we take a look at our work, creating a model is only a sliver of the time that's necessary in a total project timeline. So I asked ChatGPT, what are the tasks that I must do from initial meeting through to model delivery and invoicing? And it came out with this list. You must have an initial meeting with the client where we meet and we discuss what it is they want us to do. We get scope and we get requirements. We get a proposal agreement together. We start collecting data and perform analysis. Then we get into model design and development, actually working with Excel, which is all the fun part, right? But that's only 30%. When I asked ChatGPT, what percent, actually I asked Bard on this one, I believe, what percent of my time will be required for each task? And it responded with what rings true to me, in my experience, is that only 30% of our time is in development, and the 70% of our time is all these other tasks. So here's the next question. Can these AIs, as they exist now, help me with all these other tasks? Next screen, please. All right, so we have an initial meeting. That was our first task, right? We had to go to initial meeting. So one of the things we can ask ChatGPT to do, or Bard, is my client needs a financial model and wants to meet. Please provide the project's initial meeting agenda. And this is what it gave me. You have to have introductions. You're going to have a project overview, client requirements, data collection. It even gives me estimates on how much time is going to take and sub tasks that we need, or sub areas that we need to cover. So if you were going into your meeting and you had this ready, then you sent out this as an agenda, at least your meeting would go well and you would look very professional. Let's go to the next screen. Where else can help us? Okay, so the next prompt. One of the things that I've discovered in my lifetime, and I hope, and I'm old, as Danielle said, we've been around doing this since before Excel. Some of you may remember, I know Peter remembers VisiCalc. It's been around, spreadsheets have been around for a long time. But when I have gone to a client, the client usually has an idea of what they want, but they really don't know what they want. And getting to the core of what it is that they need requires peeling back the onion. So here is a prompt. If you go to the YouTube link that's on there, you will get this prompt, and you can see how this person asked ChatGPT to help peel back the onion. I could see myself going into a client with my laptop and running ChatGPT and using this prompt, which starts off with something like, okay, so you want me to create a financial model. What's the next question I got to ask? Next question might be, all right, so what industry is this for? Oh, we're doing banking, or we're doing manufacturing, or we're doing a merger and acquisition. What exactly is this model being used for? Let's say they come back and they say, I'm in manufacturing. Okay, so the next thing I need to know is, all right, so is this a startup, and what products might you be doing? How long is this model going to take? You're going to ask a lot of questions in order to get the scope and requirements, which is the second thing we had to do with our task list. This will help. ChatGPT can help you find the questions you need to ask so that you can then learn exactly what it is you're going to build before you ever start touching Excel. Next slide, please. So now that we've gotten our requirements, one of the things we must do, especially if you're a solopreneur or owning a company, is you got to create a contract, which means you need to create a statement of work, also known as a SAL. So if you're new to creating those things, you can go to ChatGPT or Bard and you can ask it to create a SAL. And this is
Bing.
Excuse me.
Or Bing. Bing is also quite useful. I must
yeah.
throw that in. You got to give Microsoft a little bit of support.
A little love from Microsoft, yes. Bing AI. So they're all over the place. So they're springing up everywhere. But as you can see, this is what it replied back, and it has all those things, or many of the things, that are necessary for you to have something that explains to the client, this is what it is we're agreeing to produce. And at the end of the day, when I finally deliver it, you know that I have delivered what you asked me to give you, and now you can start paying me. So having a statement of work is critical before you actually start doing work and start building your client. And I think we have one more slide. So what are all the areas that we can use? You saw that there were different types of AI. There are text, images, voice and music, and animation. But there are also different areas of business that AIs address. So if you're needing to do advertising, you see that there's Smartly.io. If you need to do animation, there's Design Beast and Toonly. Toonly is a explainer video. So if you were to promote a product so Jeff's got this wonderful add-in he's going to show us, and he could possibly use Toonly to create an explainer video to explain to everyone else what this wonderful add-in does. And you've all seen these cartoon explainer videos. There's AIs to do that. There's content collectors, there's content improvement, so that if you're creating a blog, many of you do, to help promote your business and show your expertise, you can get ChatGPT, Jasper, ScaleNet, WordTune, all these others to help you with this. Anyway, here is a list of several items that you can use to help your business, whether it's optimizing your search engine for your website, creating music or logo creation. All these things are available to us. So there's lots of things available that we can start using right now, today, that are very valuable to help promoting our business and running our business.
I mean, these things have been around for a while. They're not brand new, but it's you know, ChatGPT, OpenAI is what the one that we know that we've heard of now. But these things have been
Otter AI I've been using for a long time. I've used Toonly before. You know, there's so many out there. I mean, who hasn't used Siri, right? Siri's been around for a long time. She's pretty ordinary compared to ChatGPT, but she's still pretty good. Or because Siri can be in multiple. Helen, I think, asked a question about, you know, which are free. Most of them come with free trials or free content. They, you know, there's a couple of days free or free periods. Not as free as ChatGPT, unfortunately, but certainly there's a lot. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to hand over to Jeff in a moment, but before I do so, this is really your opportunity. Now, we don't know, we got no inside information whatsoever what Copilot is going to look like, but between us, I think we
well, I do. Sorry, I do have that information, but I'm not going to share it with you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Miss MVP. So I think there's I've seen other aspects of Copilot in Power BI and particularly in the DAX Creator, which we're going to cover off in part 2 as well. But I don't think there's been a lot in the Excel space. But I guess Jeff's going to take us through, and I'm going to share as well. I've used a bit of Jeff's code in a workbook to show us what the potential is of what this might look like in the
moment we've been waiting for.
So, Jeff, you've got your moment of glory.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. So essentially what I wanted to do was I looked at what are the common things that we need to do in Excel, and what of those can we use ChatGPT to either help or assist with. So there's a number of things we do on a regular basis that we might need to get ChatGPT's assistance with. At the moment, a lot of those things, you know, you take something from Excel, you copy and paste that into ChatGPT, you write a prompt, then it gives you a response, you copy and paste it back again. So where those things are commonly used, or they come up quite often, those are the sort of things I focused on. And I took some code that was made open source by first of all, Layla Garani, and then second of all, so she did an offer script. There was another one.
I'm going to put these links in the chat while you're talking.
Sure. All right. Perfect. Thank you. And then got another guy called Sven from Coding is Fun, ported that into VBA in Excel. And then I took what they'd done and then kind of just extended that. So basically what we can do is we can combine stuff we've got in Excel with a pre-written prompt, send that over to ChatGPT and get a response back in Excel. Then I thought about, well, let's also take this into Word. So then I ported it into Word, did a bunch of extra different kinds of functions in Word, and then I ported it into Outlook. So we're focusing on financial modeling here, so I'll leave the Word and Outlook for another day. But if you want, you can have a look at the video on the Access Analytic YouTube. So
just put the video in the chat there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Danielle.
Your video.
You're like perfect ChatGPT yourself.
Yeah, I'm at the live. Yeah.
Yeah, live ChatGPT.
Jeff, it's fair to say that obviously we don't recommend you using data that's sensitive, and be very careful how you do that, because even though it's inside Excel, you're still feeding it outside. And I guess that's hopefully going to be the benefit with Copilot, where it's going to be internal and not external. So just be very careful. We don't accept any responsibility or guarantees or warranties or whatever. So I know Jeff doesn't when you download his stuff, but just be very careful. Disclaimer and disclaimer again. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, quite right, Lance. I'm not dismissing that, but yeah, so it is important, you know, obviously anything that you put into ChatGPT, whether it's via the code that I'm giving or whether it's, you know, you copy and pasting stuff in, if it is confidential client stuff or your own company stuff. Obviously, you'd want to remove any kind of stuff that might be able to be attributed or identified with that particular company. So it gets numbers, it doesn't really know what they relate to. That's what I'd suggest anyway. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. All right. So what I've done is essentially put together, as I said, some VBA code. And then in my case, I've linked it to some buttons which I've put on my quick access toolbar. Now you could put these buttons into a custom ribbon. You can link them up to whatever you want. There's video instructions on how to do that side of it. So we're not kind of going into how do we go about linking these things up and stuff, the technical stuff behind it, but we're just going to focus on kind of what can we do. So the idea was, there's no Copilot yet for Excel, is coming obviously. And once it's implemented, will it replace what we're going to show you? Might replace some of it, might not replace some of it. So we're still not quite sure exactly what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that
but
was
right
kind of
now,
my first question when you mentioned this.
Yeah,
Jeff was like, why are you doing this? Because it's going to get superseded by Copilot.
possibly.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
possibly. We don't know, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
So,
It probably will do more than what Copilot will do, or different things. So we'll see.
Well, that's it. I guess the thing is, the code is open source. So if you have particular things that you need to do on a regular basis, you can just go in behind the scenes into, developer, VBA macros, edit the code, create a new button, link it up with your data, and you could be, add a new button to do something that you need to do on a regular basis. So it's really quite an easy thing to do. You don't need to know VBA in order to even
get ChatGPT to do that for you.
Well, you don't even need to do that.
Do
like it's so simple, I think. Anyway, I could be biased. But anyway, okay, let's do some examples. Here I've got a list of people with some salaries and some position information for Austin Power's underground layer maintenance division. And I just want to kind of, this could be any kind of text or any kind of data. And I want ChatGPT to just do an analysis of this. So what I've got behind the scenes is a pre-written prompt that will combine the pre-written prompt with this data, send it to ChatGPT. Let me just do this. I'll get this running because I'm not quite sure exactly how long it's going to take. Send it over to ChatGPT and then give me a response back. Now, the fun part of doing this live is that ChatGPT, as you know, always comes back with different stuff. So you never quite know exactly what you're going to get. So let's find out what it's going to do.
One of the things that, Jeff, you've done that's really important, I think, is that you've created these prompts ahead. So even though other people have interfaces to ChatGPT, you have created your prompts that you found worked well for you and for others.
Yeah, that was my idea. So as I said, the things that I thought would be useful for me personally, and hopefully useful for some of you also. So you can see here, it's giving me an analysis about, what the people are and what they're doing. There's a lot of people employed under Dr. Evil's henchman agreement, the Shag Me agreement. Let's not talk about that one. And there's a few people in doing fembot maintenance. We've got a mix of different kinds of workers, et cetera, et cetera. I also told it to try and take a guess as to why it thinks these trends that it's identified may have occurred. So it's trying to guess, and think what might be happening behind the scenes, what might be causing that. So that's one example. Let's say, I have a long formula, and here I've got a pretty long formula. I don't need to read what it is. It is quite long. And I'm sure you've probably got a number of formulas that are probably even longer than mine, or if not, you've seen some like that. If I just want to go, well, just explain this formula to me, like that's just way too long. I picked up someone else's spreadsheet or even my own spreadsheet. I can't remember what the heck I was doing 6 months ago.
That never happens, Jeff, come on.
Never, I know. All right, so here's a little explanation about what it thinks this formula is actually doing. And it's got a pretty good explanation. Like it's pretty accurate in terms of how it's describing that. Now it's able to be more accurate because I've used table columns and table names and so on in there. If you've got range names, I know Peter Bartholomew's a big fan of range names. and naming all your cells, like that will make it be able to analyze what your formula is trying to do much, much better. And probably you also, if you were just looking at it on your own. But a little example of what this formula is meant to be doing. I've also got an example where you just want to optimize this formula. Here's a long formula, but could that be written in a more efficient way? Let's find out whether ChatGPT can come up with a better way of even writing this formula. Maybe I'm just not even writing this formula in the best way. So there we go. There's what it thinks is a better way of writing this formula. Now, I have actually tested this previously, and if you copy paste this back in, it will actually produce the same results. Obviously, you want to test, of course. So don't just accept, like Lance was saying earlier, what it gives you, because it does make stuff up. So another example might be, if you've got someone's written a really long formula and it's just line after line after line after line, that's a really hard, difficult formula to read. How do I go about just, making this better, more formatted, easier to read? Well, I've got a reformat button. So it just takes your long formula, puts new lines in, puts spaces in, and there's my nicely formatted formula now that's a little bit easier to read. Okay, maybe still complex, and you might still disagree with me that this is easy to read, but it's perhaps easier to read than it was before. So a few things like that. So there's some of the things I was just going to talk about there. Let me just swap over. I've got some financial.
So Jeff, just quickly to jump in. So Patrick asked what you're using. Just go back to the prompt answer. You've got GPT, Da Vinci, so you've got the parameters in there. You're using the API endpoint, and of course the VBA that's structured in the way that you've structured those buttons. They have particular commands relating to what you're feeding in. So the button is structured to set up the prompt to connect to the model. So if you just go to the results, and at the top there's a bunch of JavaScript at the top.
There's some extra bits and pieces up there.
Yeah, so the text Da Vinci 003, that's the model that it's being used, and it's got the object that it's being used, text completion, and when it's created and stuff like that. So Patrick, that probably helps you a little bit. But definitely follow Jeff's. I use Jeff's code. I've done it. I've used it. It's got a great manual. It's really easy to do. It's literally copying and pasting in VBA. So definitely have a look.
So well, if we have time, we can look at the VBA if anyone's keen on that. Not sure how keen you are at 10, 11 o'clock at night in the Eastern States there, but anyway, if anyone's keen, we can look at that as well.
If you've got time.
Otherwise, download the file for free, take a look, and if you've got still got questions, let me know. This is just some training data. This is not real data, so perfectly fine to show you this. But let's say I've got some financial statements. I just want to get an analysis on this. Again, the same button here. I can say, look, just analyze these financial statements, and I can go off and it sends this over. And what I've also done. And this comes back. Anyway, let's wait for it to come back. Like I said, this is the part of the YouTube video we should edit out, the waiting bit.
We can't, we live.
YouTube is so much easier. You just go like, snip, snip. Oh, look, it happens like that. It's like magic.
Yeah. I think, Jeff, it's also when you're on the internet and you're using the web to send it back and forth in your live, is always traffic and stuff that takes a bit longer. All
right, let me just zoom that so people can read it. All right, so it's giving me an analysis. Like I said, every time I run this, it gives me something different. So I never quite know exactly what it's going to give me. So it will generate some different responses, even if I set the temperature to quite low. Like even I have experimented with that, and in a lot of this stuff, it didn't seem to make a lot of difference with the analysis and the results it was giving back. But there's a little analysis of, again, not a particularly useful one, but you might want to use this in some summits like commentary, for example, maybe as the basis for, you writing a bit more text that goes along with that, or might use it to ask some different questions or something like that. And the last one I just wanted to show was, we were sort of saying earlier, like AI is not going to replace us as financial modelers. We've still got a little way to go and all this sort of stuff, which is quite true. But I just wanted to kind of show what I've been able to get it to do using Wolfram. So Wolfram is the calculation in plugin. I'm not sure if anyone's sure some of you guys would have already played with that. And it's the thing that enables ChatGPT to go from being a purely text-based generative AI to also doing calculations. So what I've got here is a very, extremely simple financial model. Here's my extremely simple financial model, 4 years of actuals. And I've got a prompt up here that says, okay, use these values. This is what they relate to. This is where my assumptions are. I want you to generate the values for the next 3 years. So years 5, 6, and 7, using these assumptions and these formulas here. So what I did was in ChatGPT, one of the other things I can do is you can highlight some data, and then you can basically type in a long prompt. So I'm sure the VBA people here know what's the maximum number of characters you can fit in an input box. All right, if I wait long enough, someone will type that in the chat. It's 255, just to spoiler alert. But so that's really not long enough if you want to write a much longer prompt. So here I need to write a longer prompt. So I just basically enabled you to pick a cell that contains your prompt, and then you can kind of go back to that and rewrite it and iterate on it as well. So range, it'll substitute in whatever data I've highlighted here. And I could say, go and do this analysis. So what that gives me, and I've done a number of tests in this example here, but just to save time, this is kind of one example of what it comes back with. And I said, give it to me in a table. So it actually generated all this stuff at the top here, up until column J. And next to that, I wrote down what I was expecting it to do. So these are my actual calculated values in terms of what it needs to do. So the number of units, which is at the top here, pretty close for most of the years, but you can see by the time I get down to year 3, I'm trying to forecast my, my net or gross profit, I think it was, it's like $100,000 off. So this is my variance. So this was just using ChatGPT to do calculations. And so I said to it, how can you not tell me what the calculations are that you think you are doing? And so it listed them all out here, which is great. But like if you multiply these things out, that times that does not equal that number. So on its own, ChatGPT is like a hopeless calculator. However, if I ask it one by one to do the calculations,
crazy. I cannot believe that.
I know. A computer generates, this is the calculation I'm doing, but it generates the wrong answer. But if I tell it to do the calculations one by one, it actually gets the calculations correct, which is also quite bizarre. So then I was like, okay, let's put this. So I took the same thing and I put it into the Wolfram plugin. Sorry, put it into ChatGPT 4 with the Wolfram plugin, and it generated years 5, 6, and 7 exactly right. And it knows exactly what it did, and it got all of the answers completely right on my little mini financial model here. And I haven't tested it out on a full 3-way. Maybe I should get onto that at some point, but ran out of time. So just to illustrate, I don't need to be, all I want to do is some simple kind of calculations. As an end user, like I don't even need to write an Excel formula. I can just say, here's my inputs, here's my assumptions that I want you to apply. Okay, albeit very simple, yes. But without even writing a single Excel formula, it's generated a financial model. And we could go back to this and we could say, what would this look like if I, instead of increasing my widget sales prices by 2% a year, we increased it by 3% a year. And so we could just run scenarios in that way, which I thought was just fascinating to see how far I could actually push it. So with that, I'm going to hand back.
Jeff, there's a question in the chat that Patrick raised in terms of Wolfram plugin. What does it do? And I think from my understanding, and I've registered and I just haven't gone around to actually using it, but I knew you would beat me to the punch. It's effectively substituting what is otherwise a language model into more of a calculation model, which is why it's getting it better. So it's using information, I think you said information from like investor magazines and other journals and mathematical journals and statistics, and it's learning all of that data. It's not just learning the general information on the web, it's actually getting closer and nearer to calculation logic. And so that is really powerful. So yeah, what sums it more is the mathematical master of customer GPT. So it's definitely the way to go if you're looking to use a calculation engine, not just to use the straight out of the box ChatGPT. And if you're just using GPT 3.5, it's definitely worth using for and paying that little bit of extra money to have a play.
So yeah, exactly. I mean, it's essentially a scientific and financial and mathematical calculation engine. So what ChatGPT does, if it goes, this looks like a mathematical calculation I need to do, it'll pass that off to the Wolfram plugin to do the calculation. Wolfram will then return the result back. You will notice, and you will see a noticeable slowdown when it does that, because this little simple model here, probably took about 30 seconds for it to recalc. So it did take quite a while. With in Excel, it'd be like instant. But I've got to also write all the formulas, right? So that's the minuses. Was there any other questions that we should talk about before we?
Patrick says it'd be cool if it passed the formula back, but you can ask it for the formula in terms of what it got, right? And I suspect that Copilot will actually do the formula.
I mean, I've actually got a button in here that you can actually ask it to write a formula for you, and you can highlight specific cells and say, write me a formula that does this using those particular cells that you highlighted. So I have got that's my write formula button, which I didn't demo, but there is a button to do something.
I've got an example of that where we try to use even just some product and it just failed miserably, but maybe that's just bad prompting on our behalf.
So
cool.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll hand back to you.
There's a question here from Arnaud that's interesting. Are plugins safe to use? How can we make sure that the creators are legit?
I guess we are somewhat relying on OpenAI to do that vetting process for us. But I guess if you're using widely used plugins from reputable providers, a lot of the plugins
it's no different to an add-in. Yeah, Jeff, I agree. It's no different to an add-in. You're going to have people that get verified add-ins. Depends on where you get it. If it's listed as an add-in in the OpenAI, that's fine. Jeff didn't have to do anything for his VBA code. We know he's a good modeler. We know he can do these things. So I think we're very much in the experimental phase at the moment, but I know you can enable Azure instance of ChatGPT, and Microsoft have vetted that right through OpenAI because they bought into the company. So there's going to be a lot of these that you are going to be able to use with a lot of faith and security. But the moment you're going just straight into the web, of course, just be wary of that and watchful.
Yep. Like a lot of the add-ins or plugins. Oh, sorry.
I'd like to address Stefan's questions because it's something that's very important to what's happening in my area. He's asking about, is there some concerns about giving information into ChatGPT? So one of the areas that I have responsibility for is the police department. And one of the things that we're very concerned about is if the police department goes in and starts using ChatGPT, which has happened, not our police department, but has happened, you're exposing personal information to the world, and that is a big problem. So yes, do not put into ChatGPT anything that is personal. I think, Lance, you touched on that. Anything that's confidential.
You do have the option as well within ChatGPT of setting your conversations to not be used as part of the training. So that is an option, which they recently added in, probably to get the Italians back on board. And you can also set them to expire after 30 days as well.
Well, that's true. As I can tell you that when you put that stuff out on the internet, it's not exactly, there's no such thing as internet privacy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that I would really trust just ticking a box to be sure that that information wasn't going to get used and turn up somewhere else.
Well, they had to do it to be GDPR compliant, I think. So otherwise, Italy wouldn't allow them to run the software in that country.
I think, although you're right, Danielle, I think there's going to be a lot. And look, it still has to catch up, right? Regulation is way far behind where it needs to be. But let's just quickly jump through, and then we'll maybe just leave the rest for if we want to go down rabbit holes. So I did something slightly different to Jeff. I actually I created my own Rubin called ChatGPT, but then I also put it next to another add-in which I use for Excel Cloud. So this is just, there's nothing in here. So I'm going to show you there's nothing in the results sheet, just so you know that there's nothing beforehand. Not that Jeff would have done that. I know it works, but just to make sure that people, and get some commentary, right? So I'm just going to highlight this. So it's going to run revenue, my variances, expenses. Sorry, Jeff, was that?
So I was just going to say, so this is using the same code as what I was just demonstrating as well.
Yeah, it's the exact same code. I've just changed the buttons and
just
and so
different
I like
interface.
Optimize, different interface, explain formula, respond to text, all the stuff that Jeff's shown. Although I think I've got your first release version. I don't have your latest, so maybe there's a couple of changes in that one. But in any event, then go to the source. Don't come to me. Analyze the data is really what I'm going to do. So, going to analyze that information to write some commentary. And this is kind of the freaky bit, right? Because how many finance and accounting professionals are going and they're having to write this information, right? So again, I've got the text and what it's doing, and I've got the information, what the data shows. Actually, this isn't probably just better to keep it out. So, really basic. It's picked up that CY's current year and prior year. And it also gives an indication of what that might relate to. So it's generative, right? It's generating a possible answer. Now, if I have this inside my organization and I give it access to the data, then actually I'm going to get some really valuable commentary back. And of course, provided I'm using the right model, not a language model. But I could go back and I could sort of change this to a different date, and then I could rerun that. So, and then just click, analyze the data. And same thing. So, by setting up your workbook and doing this analysis, you are going to find a significant amount of improvement in terms of, so of course that was, a slightly different format. As Jeff said, every time you run it something, you can even run it on the same data and you can get a different thing. And this talks about factors like increasing sales and all the rest. I then did a few things. This workbook, by the way, you can download it. Danielle will send a link to it with the slides. I started to play with a few things, like here was my prompt in terms of, asking to write an email to introduce a new service line around business advisory capability. And of course, we had this new letter written. I also try to use a bit of Sven's prompt as well, and writing a letter. So, again, wouldn't do it in Excel. You'd probably do it in Word, is what Jeff's done. But, I was just having a play. And I guess the thing that was interesting for me is, when you start to explain formulas and use it, here it actually returned that formula. So I asked for a sum product formula and it gave me that. So you just got to be careful with reference to where it is. If you don't give it reference, it's hard to actually write the exact formula. There are other add-ins, by the way. So, obviously this Lola Gironi's Office script, and there's a few other add-ins here, Excel Labs, GPT for Excel. Here's the GPT for Excel, although this is a paid add-in and it gives you 10 and then it's done. And this was those prompts that I showed before.
We've got Mike is just asking, are there plugins to Power BI, Lance?
Yes, there are, which you're going to cover in part 2. So there's already Copilot, which we can talk about. The DAX quick measures is Copilot driven. So there's definitely stuff on there we can cover. So so that's kind of what you can do on that front, and it's for me it's just super exciting. So I'll quickly go back to the slides. Can everyone see the slides, or is that still on Excel? Yep.
It's still on Excel.
Okay, so sorry, I should have shared the screen. Let's do share screen. So again, I'm not going to go through the slides in detail, but you can read them after. It's just going through what I just spoke about. And we spoke about this. At what stage are we going to say give a prompt and have a 3-way model? I think we're a way off. Yes, there's other technologies that potentially augment that, like whether it's OpenBox and Medana or whatever. If they use that, then of course it's leveraging that technology in amongst GPT. new learning curves, right? There's a huge amount of learning that we can explore here, but what we are going to look at is Fabric as well. And here is the Copilot within Power BI, the quick measure Copilot suggestion in terms of doing DAX. So there is quite a bit. It's not too bad. I've had a bit of a play with it. So there's certainly a lot to do. And Danielle's again offered to host this, and I've said I'll take on the challenge to sort of run a few of these. But also, we don't want to forget the innovation that sits inside Excel. The lambdas, the 5G modeling methodology that Craig's has been sharing and will share as well is there's so much. It's not just all about ChatGPT. It's not just all about AI. I think I ran a poll. I know it didn't get it. Obviously, it got pushed down. It wasn't boosted by LinkedIn, but still 80% of people are not even using Power Query, right? Which is obviously quite upsetting. This is Power BI embedded in PowerPoint. Not many people are doing this as well, right? So, just the ability to just use Power BI in presentations, embedding, would be hugely powerful. So I can look at my income statement, by different products and the like. But anyway, stay tuned. This is not the end. This is the beginning. We haven't got a date yet for part 2 and potentially a part 3, but I think it's pretty exciting, Danielle, in terms of
I can see that
where we can go and what's happening.
Yeah, I can see we're going to have more as they bring out new technologies and new features. I think we should sort of make it a bit of a more regular session. So yeah. Was there any other questions that we should address before we close off? We're just about time.
I think yeah. So the links to the slides and my Excel will be in Danielle's email. If you're on my newsletter, you'll get the link to that as well. And if you want Jeff's files and Jeff's code, Danielle's shared the link in the chat, but I think you'll share it on the email as well, Danielle.
Yes,
but
I
you
will.
can go to the Access Analytics YouTube channel as well.
Yeah,
and,
so you guys have been so generous with just giving this code and this experience and knowledge. So thank you so much to all of you. It's been an absolutely fantastic session. I knew it would be. So thank you so much again, and I'll send out the recording with what we've talked about and some of the links in the files. So awesome. Yes, I will send the links out. Yes, I will do that. Fantastic. All right. Any last comments from any of you before we sign off for today? All right.
I think Craig summed it up when he said, need to be using it really. And it looks like most of the people in our chat are very keen users already and looking to use it more. So I think that's fantastic.
Great. All right. We'll sign off and see you next time.